And we're recording. So welcome everybody. And we're looking forward to Scott's presentation. So go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, we'll jump right in. And I want to really welcome Scott Wilson of VADA Color, printer extraordinaire. And we are super excited, Scott, to hear what you have to say about printing. So often we just look at our images online, and it's really a treat to have a physical item after we've worked hard at photography. So thank you for being here. Yes. And when you share your screen, Scott, everyone, you can hover and you can change your layout so you can see that screen large instead of in the tiles here.
And if anybody in the audience here has comments, you need to use this mic so that people online can hear, okay? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. My name is Scott Wilson. I've been a student of photography and printing for probably since I was a teenager. A student of photography and printing. Thank you for having me. And I just wanted to go over a few things that when I work with photographers that come into the shop, and some of the things that might help them so that they can get expected results when they go to a lab or go to or print from their own home, or you know, they're shooting with their phones or 35s or anything that they use, and just go through some of the processes and help setting up your computer that helps represent your art, your photographs. Photographs in any digital image have a color language, and it's really important that if you're planning on getting your images printed, that me as a printer understand the language of what your photographs are sending to me, and that's the color management part of photography. And so there's a few things in Photoshop that help you set up, in any editing tools that you use on your computer should have these color settings that you can use. And I have a few examples that hopefully we can get this to, I can't tell. How would I get this? So let me get this. I just, okay, so this is just a simple photograph that I had taken somewhere. Anyways, so this is Photoshop, and I've just opened it up. I haven't looked at this image in years. And so I'm in a Photoshop program, and one of the most important things is what is your working space, your space that you're working to edit your color, or the how you're viewing your images on a computer. And there's usually 3 settings that I recommend, and that would be sRGB, Adobe 98, and there's another one that photographers like to use is Pro Photo. And so those are 3 recommended color spaces that we should have our images assigned when you're editing and doing work with your images. And for instance, so I have Photoshop open, and under Edit, you've got color settings down there. So this screen comes up. This is a fresh Photoshop thing, and if you can see down there, the working space, this is the default is sRGB, and you can see that, and you've got choices all the way down in here. So you've got Adobe 98 and Pro Photo. Those are the 2 that I recommend. One of those, and there's no right or wrong thing. Pro Photo is a bigger color space. The color space is the amount of gamma that color is able to exhibit. sRGB is a smaller gamut. Adobe 98 is a larger gamut. It's going to portray more colors and show more colors as more saturated. And ProPhoto is the next step up. One of the things about ProPhoto is that it's really an extended gamma, and it looks great on your monitor, but in the printing world, it gives you a little bit of there's some restrictions because in printing, we're not able to show that full profile in a print because of the science of images being exhibiting the backlit from the monitor and things like that. It's just the color space is more restricted in conventional printing because of there would be how much ink we can put down, because we're limited to how much ink we can put on paper or canvas or anything like that. And we just don't have the ability to show how much image is backlit from a monitor. That printing is a different science. Printing is not backlit. It's the light hits it on top and then goes to the paper and reflects back. And on a monitor, everything is backlit. But we're back to this color space, this color settings in Photoshop. We're just going to stick to Adobe 98. Oh, I'm sorry. sRGB. That's somewhere back. And here we go. And that would be the first thing. So this one's the default is sRGB. And you can, some of this other stuff, CMYK and the gray, that stuff you can just leave as is, because we're not concerned about that. We're only concerned about RGB. And what's really important is the color management policies. Preserve embedded profiles and is preserving. So that what that means is that if a photograph has an assigned profile, it's not going to kick it out. It's not going to throw away the language that photograph is speaking because you assigned it something, or you converted to a certain profile. It's not going to go to your computer default. It's going to just let it stay the same. It's going to speak the same language that it came in. So, but how do you know? Okay, well, what's important is you see all these little empty boxes here. Profile mismatches, ask when opening, ask when pasting, ask when opening. So those are all important things, and I have them checked at all times, because what that does is if my working space is sRGB and a ProPhoto file comes in, or an Adobe 98 assigned image comes in, it's going to flag it. It says this has a different profile than your working space, and then you can accept it and know that's something that you wanted to keep that profile, and it won't convert or anything like that. So that's a good thing to have here is those 3 check boxes. That just warns you every time that something is different. And some of these there's conversion options. Those are all things that you can play around with when you're doing when you're conversions to a different profile from something that you've edited. You're going from Adobe or sRGB to Adobe 98. You can convert them in different rendering intents. Those are all rendering intents. And that's a lot of science stuff, but the most important stuff is to know what your working space is. So right now we're in sRGB, and we're going to click OK. So this image here that I have open, we're going to look at this, and this space is showing us in sRGB. Now, if I want to convert it to something, or I want to edit whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm editing in. If I wanted to go to Adobe 98, I could assign that profile, and you can see the changes. Can you see that little change? So it's taking this information and throwing it into a different color space intentionally, because we already know it's sRGB. And this, another example is ProPhoto. let's find that. See how much that changed.
Mhm.
So that's two different things that this image that we haven't done nothing to, it just came straight from a camera. We have three options that we can use and start editing. So for instance, now let's just go back. We know we opened this one up in sRGB, and we want to do a simple edit. Are there any questions at this point?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, yeah, one of the things, the color space of your inks is so important. And I know that when I've had some printing done, I always try to, if I can, use the Pro Photo because of the wider color space.
Right.
But then in relationship, back when we used to print, when we were using separations,
Right.
if you had like fluorescence or something, we always had to use a spot color in a separate, separation
Yeah.
to print that color. So people want to be aware if they have very bright colors or more fluorescent type that they might want to do a test print to see if it's going to turn out the way they like it.
Right.
But you
And-
might touch on that.
And when you have colors like that, well, typically, if you're going to photo in photographs, fluorescent colors don't photograph well. Fluorescent colors are only become fluorescent because they're used in individual pigment, and a lot of printers don't have those fluorescent colors. They don't have the super bright orange and the bright greens. Some do, and we do now. Is we have an orange and a green printing inks, but they're not fluorescent. So fluorescence, because of how ultraviolet, when it hits fluorescent colors, you got to have ultraviolet light hitting it to create that glow that happens in fluorescent. And in fluorescent printing, they now have specific printers that will do those, and that's, in old school printing, you do a separate. So you, if I wanted to print fluorescent, I'd convert my printers to have fluorescent inks in them and use that. Is that helpful? So
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring it up, and then if
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have these really like some of these fall colors, or in the spring you get those greens that are
right.
so bright, and some people might come in and you might print.
And that's
a
in
section
your
of test.
lab. The lab that you use most often will probably have a 12 color printer, and they'll have all those individual greens and oranges, and they process through the printer through the rips, and will take those colors and exhibit them in the best way possible if they're color managed well enough. And so you'll get those bright greens and oranges that happen in those colors. And you talked about Pro Photo again. Is the Pro Photo looks fantastic on your monitor. There's always a fall off when you go to printing. So I want to do a simple edit here on this and see how this works out. What's important when you're editing your images to the way of seeing your image and seeing what kind of file you have is to look at the histogram. The histogram is one of the most important parts of editing your image and seeing what all the information that's there. Now, if I just go to modify. See if I can find in my histogram here.
Just about this. You're back in that list.
See if I can find that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's it. Okay, we'll just go right there. Okay, so there's a histogram right there. And what you're seeing is the information of this image. And you see these spikes here, that's showing you the information of what's in that there. And let's see if this is doing what I want it to do. That's not editing that. Let's see. Cancel that. Again, this isn't my. Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
see if I can get into here. What would I this one?
It was on that list.
Um, I can't see that. Why don't you come up here and show me where I've got this this window. I want to view extras. I just want to see my little layers on here. Windows info.
Oh, you've got this in the way.
Next one up.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm on board. Okay.
Yeah, I just realized you're seeing something different than.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, here we go.
Now you can move this.
Okay, this is what I'm looking for.
There you go.
Okay.
Actually, let me try something else. Yeah, but it's blocking what he's seeing there.
Okay. So now I'm on board. Okay, so now I've opened up my levels. And this is the properties of my levels. This is how we're going to adjust our image without doing anything. That's no editing, and right now that's right there, and you can see all the values. These are all the information in these levels. That's all the information in this file, and you can see right from the get-go there's a gap in the front end, and there's no information in that. So I want to create some tonal values in this and some contrast with this image. So I might take it up to there. You don't want to go too far. You start losing information. You want to just peak it right there. And then you can create a little bit with the back end and the shadow part. And if you want to adjust some of this or adjust either way, something like that, but you're not losing any information. So what's important is these clouds and that mist in there. So if you go too far, you're going to start losing information. You don't want to do that because it's important, because if your monitor is set really low, you're going to adjust to your monitor. So important is to your monitor brightness levels can, if you're just editing to your monitor, you've got to be careful because you can lose information. So the idea is, looking at these histograms, is to see where your information is and not over edit and not lose anything, because it's all about just the information. What your monitor is doing is can throw you off. So it's really important with that. So we're just going to do a simple little edit there. And, just something, make it snappy and get that mist to show up a little bit. And then, okay, so there's my edit. And now we're going to decide, okay, do I like we talk about, okay, do I want to add saturation, do things like that, or we can just go to, and this is just an sRGB. Now you can see what happens when you assign a different profile. We talk about ProPhoto. Boom, that changes it quite a bit. So if you like that, that's just something you wanted to do, you could do that, and that's going to work out pretty good there. And if you just wanted to do Adobe 98, that's one way of doing it like that. So, okay, so I'm going to stick with Adobe 98 because maybe that's a comfort zone that you have, or that's your working space. Or if we're going to just stick to sRGB, we'll just stick with that. But for this case, I want to show one thing right here. Since okay, we're going to just save that. So we have applied that correction to this image. Now the important part is okay, I'm happy with this. Now I want to save it. And this might be something that I want to print. So we'll do a file save. It's just on my, I want to just save the desktop. going to be on the, okay, we'll just save it right there. I'll just save it right there. So now down here, you see this embed color profile. That's very important. So that's a sign right there. So if that's unchecked, my assigned profile has no effect. It comes to me, or it comes to a printer, he doesn't know what it's got this levels adjustment on there, but it's going to go to their default, the default of the printer that they're using. So it's going to be defaulted to that. So it's important that you let a printer know, or anybody else that's going to use that image, what the language of this image is going to be, which is, we want it to be Adobe 98. So we want to embed that color profile, and we would just save it. So now I'll replace that. We're just going to, I think did it replace it? Okay, there's that. And so now the next example I want to show you is, I'm going to close this out.
And then the file format, you would use TIFF?
What file format?
When you saved it,
Oh, this is a TIFF. Yes, a TIFF. This is a TIFF, already a TIFF. So I always like to save as a TIFF.
all right,
JPEG compression is always a loss. It's a loss. It compresses images and throws out information. So I like to maintain the integrity of the image and always use a TIFF. But I want to close that out and reopen that image, and I want to show an example. Okay, so this is the one I just saved. Now, when that comes up, see that little flag, embedded profile mismatch. Because I changed Photoshop settings, this is a new file coming in, and it says, okay, it's a profile mismatch. Because my working profile, my working is sRGB, but this is an Adobe 98 file. So you've got these choices: convert documents color to the working space. That would be changing it. Discard the embedded profile. So it's important that the person opening up this new file understands what this is trying to say. And that's where checking those boxes allows you to know it. And when you're saving a document, that when it leaves your space and you're giving it to someone else, it has the color language attached to it. And anybody after that should be able to, if they're set up properly, will understand what is happening to that file and how it should be interpreted. So we're just going to open that up, and so there you go. Now, if I didn't, we can go through that. What would happen? It would just throw out it would revert back to sRGB. Any questions on that?
Scott, I have a question. So if you're challenged in following along with these different color spaces, is it best to just stick to sRGB because then it's pretty universal?
Yes, it does. It's all a matter of your personal preference. I set my default in some of my working space is sRGB.
Yeah.
But
And-
I also convert and use Adobe 98 but I just set it at sRGB, and then I just work within those parameters in that way. And so I'm always knowing what's happening, because I use both sRGB. I use all the color spaces. I use in my shop, I have my own personal in shop ICC profiles that I generate and use for some of the photography that I do. I have specific profiles that I use that are intended for some of the projects I do. But if everything's flagged and checked, the boxes are checked, you can see what's happening.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you have a printer at home, I've found that like the Pro Photo can really whack it out.
Yeah. And it does in some cases. And so if it's used mildly, it's okay, but you can really turn some reds really, really bright and red. And, but, in printing, the printing labs aren't able to show all those transitions that you're seeing on the monitor with the, Pro Photo.
The other thing, while I still have the mic, these same things can be set in Lightroom too. So if you go to Lightroom preferences, it has exact same kind of screens. If you're doing what I call round tripping between Lightroom and Photoshop, they should match, or else you're going to get yourself in trouble. All right. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, there's a question at home, Steve.
Yeah, so the printers that you are using, I know I've heard a lot of the printers now are able to handle a little wider color gamut than sRGB, possibly getting into the Adobe 1998 color gamut. Are your printers like close to that or strictly sRGB?
Well, so you're saying, are the printers capable of doing the 98? Is that?
Correct, correct. As far as the color
Yeah.
gamut, yes.
Yeah, well, the whole idea is the way my shop, or how I manage color is when I do a print, when I print, I have it and I calibrate my monitors with spectrometers. I use color calibration software and things like that. When I do a print, the whole idea is that my print looks like what's my monitor. So
Right.
I'm pretty in tune to what's happening on my monitor. But what's happens a lot is a lot of times that the monitors throw a lot of things off, and the idea is to not really edit to your monitor, is to be careful about that, is to edit to the values. And where I talked about the histogram is not losing information and things like that. So if you do a print, a lot of times, for an example, we'll do a test print for someone. Comes in, do a little test print. I said, take this home and compare this to your monitor. Adjust your monitor to look like my print. And that way you can get better results that way, so that you can adjust your monitor to do things that help it out, so that you and I will have the same conversation. Because a lot of times the levels of monitors are set at too bright of a setting, and then that throws things off. And one way of
Right.
fixing that is to have a sample print, or adjust your monitor, or use some calibration software for your monitors.
Right.
That helpful?
Right. No, but I'm just trying to see, are the printers that you are using, are they getting close to the color gamut of like Adobe 1998?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without doubt. We have 12 color printers, and how they do that is they allow each color, the red and yellows, or the red magentas and the blacks, and they all have light cyan and a heavy cyan, so it picks up all those things, so we can throw a lot of heavy ink down and light ink that cover the lighter areas. So yeah, I say we're spot on to Adobe 98.
Okay,
And
cool.
most printers are, if they're calibrated right.
Right.
Paper, because depending on what you're going to use, you're going to get different colors. And I know you can download profiles.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if you're going to talk about that.
Well, yeah, a lot of printers do that, and I work with a lot of printers all over the place where they'll send me their shop. If I'm doing a book, or if I'm doing conventional printing, they'll send me there's profiles that they use because that's calibrated for a paper, or it's a paper profile, and you can convert that to that, or use that third-party profile to assign to that or convert to their color space in their shop. And so that's something, because a lot of different papers have different attributes that if the like in conventional printing, they have web paper, like the uncoated papers. Coated papers will exhibit color a lot different than uncoated papers. Fine art papers will exhibit colors differently than glossies. The photo papers is completely different. So the idea is, what we do in a color managed shop is that we make up the difference. So when I print this image on 3 or 4 different paper substrates, whether it's canvas, fine art paper, or a photographic print, that they all look the same. They're all in the same ballpark. They won't have the glossiness of a photo paper, but they'll exhibit the punch and things like that. Does that help you? Yeah. So that's one thing about, that's really important about these profiles and what you're using in your working space.
I wanted to talk about, now I use color calibration software for my monitors. And I notice they will be, like you say, what you see on your monitor is brighter, but at least my recommendation is to, at least, if people should have color calibration software, to at least get their basic,
Yeah.
colors set the way they should be. And then it's more a luminance, how bright.
It is. And in most cases, it's all just a brightness setting in a monitor. And so what we're trying to do, what I think anybody who's a photographer or anybody is just be pretty darn close. It does, because they're, different monitors, they exhibit color. You can change your monitor settings and how it displays in Adobe 98 or sRGB. You can change a lot of settings, things like that. But in most cases, what we really want to be on target is that the lightness and darkness, because that's the most crucial thing. Because you edit the real darker areas of an image can be troublesome for printers. So, for instance, let's just go to this image right here. The values of these dark spaces. I'm looking at her jacket. Okay. If you use your info tool, this is where go to, we're talking about, this is also about color management, and some of these values, if you look at info, and there again, it's just studying your photographs. You see right there in info, this black has a value of 2332. 0 is absolute black. Okay. So what happens a lot, because this is illuminated, it's backlit, you're going to see those transitions between from 0 to 25. You're going to see some of those transitions, where in printing, printing does not exhibit or show the changes between 25 to 0, is because it's incapable of doing that because of the gamma of the paper and the process. So one of the things that I like to tell photographers or that have concerns about their images where there's a lot of dark areas is to be careful of that editing part of the darker areas, and to look at your values, because the RGB values go from 255 to 0, 0 being absolute black and 255 being white. So, and we see in this lady's jacket, and let's see if I pull up this. Okay. There's values. So one of the things that can be done, is this in the way right here? Can you see that now? Okay. To help images, if you're concerned about, or you're trying to calibrate with a printer or a printer that you can consistently use, and you've always had an issue is, man, it just always comes out a little dark. Okay, well, the monitor will show the value drop, the value changes between 0 and 25. So one of the things that you can do is to edit that out or take an output channel and change that. I'm going to do this dramatically and see how the values of that change. So that's the output levels of the shadow areas of this image. So if those were at 0, and if I set them to 15 or 20, that black is now going to be 20, or it's going to be 23 because so it's 26. So right now, that's like where the black would be conventionally set for printing. And this is something that's not set in standard because the printer does different things, but it's just something that you should be aware of that. Well, I can see these subtle details in the shadow when I'm editing on my monitor because of the backlit. Is it that helpful? And it's one of the things to be concerned about if you have a really heavy dark image and you want to show all these subtle changes. If it's just a punch black, it doesn't matter. It can be 0 and things like that. So for instance, I'm going to try and open up I'm going to open up a scale. Talking about. Okay, so this is a black and white RGB scale. It goes from 255 to 20. 0 right there, 254 on the top. Mids, 118. That's probably like the mid-tone, 118 in RGB. But down here, you'll see that's 0, 3, 0, 0, 0. So right here, I draw a rule. Right here, right there where that mark is, that's probably going to be the black spot. So if you wanted to show any detail, and you can see the transition on your monitor going down, but printers are going to have an issue trying to show those transitions from that marker on down to the bottom. So in this case, and I wanted to show those transitions while I'm editing an image, and it's important to me, I would do a levels on that, and then I would probably bring it up maybe 10, 15. And you can see how that changes. See how that changes? So you can show if you had a lot of detail in those dark, heavy black areas, you would start seeing some of those details.
Scott, there's a question in the chat for an iMac. Is the in-computer calibration acceptable, or should I go back to using the spider I used on the old PC?
The spiders are fantastic. I mean, and just the regular your brightness makes all the difference. And taking something that you've had printed or you print at home, and assuming that you had your printer is using the proper paper profiles, just if you like what you're seeing and it's just a little bit heavy and dark, just adjust your monitor settings.
Okay, so the in-computer calibration software is okay. There are other ways, or would you say
There's other ways. There's colors. If you want to spend the money and use a spectrometer, and which is how I do it. And yes, I mean that works. That works fantastic. But you can still have issues of 25 RGB values of 25 to 0 at any time. So if those values are important to you, then you can adjust for that. Even though you're seeing that when you get to printing, it's going to be it might look not as well here, but when it's printed, it's going to be just fine on your monitor.
But for color, do you recommend Spider for calibration or the in-computer software?
Probably color for a spider for
Spider.
spider.
Okay.
If that's
Yeah. There you go, Marilyn.
yeah.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah. So, now I originally used to use or I have the other main brand, which is the Color Monkey by, oh God, I can't even remember the name of the
Yeah.
software, but
Yeah.
I've actually been using that with the display cal software. It seems like that rendered a lot better color than the Color Monkey software. I'm using a iMac as well. The only thing that I ponder on is going to be the brightness. I typically am gonna say 90 is gonna be a good brightness for that, or what type of software have you been using for your calibration?
I use X-Rite. I use X-Rite. So that's
Yeah.
just it's X-Rite is what I use. That's what I use for all my in-house color management. For everything that I do, I you know, manage my printers with that. And,
Okay.
And so it's my whole color manage is through X-Rite, and that's what I use. So you know, I know Color Monkey and the Huey sticks and things like that. I think they do a pretty decent job, but it really just matters is how are your results if you have them printed when you print, you know, basically what my suggestion is if everything's working out for you, then you're doing the right thing. But if you're finding you're having some issues between your printer and you know they're reasonably calibrated or something, and you know how you know, so you might be at a loss of what's happening or something like that. But if you're getting decent results, then you're probably in a good space.
So now, with the X-Rite software, I mean, typically do you use the automated brightness for the monitor then?
Yeah, it runs through a program, and it just, you know, it flashes all these colors on there, and it tells you what to set the monitor. So it will override what your monitor settings are. So it just flashes it goes through a test process, and you get all these colors that comes up, and it just checks it, and it runs it through a software program, and then it applies a masking correction for it, and then it just does it. Uh, and for the most part, in my shop, I just I look at the values, RGB numbers, and the histogram, and that's what I use. I don't rely on my monitor. I mean, you get comfortable. Your monitor is always at the same setting, and that's where the color management comes in. You just adapt. So okay, that's been managed, and I've run whatever software you use, and then you make adjustments with your levels and your and then any corrections that you want to do as far as reds and blues. You know, in photography, it's just what you see in your shooting. So in my business where I'm doing a lot of artwork, I've got a challenge of matching different pigments and things like that are a real challenge, and where I just physically do color corrections and specific color corrections. So there's a process that I go through and anything that I shoot anyways, and I make minor adjustments to dial things in. And so nothing's perfect. That's what I've found out, that nothing's perfect. But you just want to be ballpark. And then if you're happy with the results that you're getting from your printer, and you know, if you can physically see something that's really off, that'll be apparent.
So quick question, Scott. So if you've got some people that might not have used your services before, so I think I'm too loud, too soft.
No, up a little. I'm hard.
Oh, so I guess my question is, one thing that's really cool is you would be willing to do like a small test print that they can take back to their monitor And then basically, at least what I've found is it's basically just a matter of turning down your brightness. Cause usually what will happen
Yeah,
is
yeah,
you're
yeah.
editing to too bright of a monitor and the print comes out really dark. So you can correct that by you giving us a
Right,
test print.
right,
We go
right.
back and then we basically slide the monitor darkness till it matches, even though the print's not what
Right,
we want.
Right. That
And
keeps
then
you on
we
the same
edit to
page.
that. We brighten up the image or, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. And we just so that's the key is to do if you're unsure of how things are working out for you, to just have a small test print done of something of one of your favorite images that has a lot of dark tones and things and that and colors or darkness levels, and then do a test print, and knowing that that lab that you're using, assuming that they're color managed and they're going to do a good job, you just look at that print when it comes back, because that's what you want. You want the you're not hanging monitors up on your wall. You're hanging prints and you're hanging art on the wall. You're not putting your monitors up. So the monitor is just a guide. And once you're in a ballpark and using, the color spaces and the color signs, one of the biggest problems is not color managing, is not checking the boxes or not assigning the profiles that are onto your images. Okay, so I didn't know if that was a question or not.
Nope.
So that's one of the things that I would recommend, is just if you're doing a lot of editing and you want to have successful results, is to start out with a small print and look at your images, and then set your monitor so that you have an analog print, something that's real is what you'd be getting, and adjusting your monitor to set up to that, and then you can make adjustments to that. So once you find the sweet spot where everything is calibrated from your print to your monitor, and that'll help you get intended results, and not from over editing and things like that would happen, and that would be helpful in doing some of your printing. Some of the other things I've may have talked about too is in heavy editing is working in 16-bit. A lot of photographers shoot in JPEG. That's an 8-bit process, and it's compressed. If you can shoot raw and convert and work in raw, or open in 16-bit, and you want to do a lot of heavy editing, is to edit in 16-bit, and it helps you, gives you so much more latitude in making heavy corrections where you won't get any banding or things like that. Heavy banding that you might do in skies, where you might see some fluctuations in color, especially when you blow them up big, and things like that. So 16-bit is always the way to go. TIFFs, JPEG isn't, if the file is just a nice clean file and JPEG is not heavily edited, then JPEGs are fine and 8-bit is fine. But if you want to do a lot of heavy editing, or you're doing some night shooting, things like that, where you're going to do a lot of, that's where the heaviness comes in, and you're pushing and pulling a lot of light because you're trying to get some shadow detail, you want to be in 16-bit. That's really important in any kind of editing, especially in photography. And once you convert, you take a TIFF and you want to send it to a lab, and you edit in 16-bit, you make a JPEG, you've already thrown that out. That's already, it instantly becomes an 8-bit. So it will compress it and do create some of those things that are not pleasant in some of the imaging, where you see some banding in skies and subtle tones and things like that. 16-bit will maintain all them subtle transitions.
Yeah, the skies and gradients
Yeah,
are the most important when it comes to banding and having that amount of information.
Shooting clouds, you see a lot of cloud action, and the best thing about shooting clouds or seeing clouds in the sky is seeing all the texture in clouds. If it's just a big white spot, then you've lost all that. You've over edited a cloud, and it's just a big blank white spot in a print. So that's a cause of over editing, and where you might see some of those details in a monitor setting that's not quite set properly. That would be something that would happen if, going from, over editing.
Quick question, Scott. So the 16-bit, that makes a lot of sense. Is that a matter of editing in RAW? Or where do you get to the 16-bit?
Well, you can just, it's how you're bringing it in. If you're bringing it, when you bring it from your when you download it from your camera, download it in RAW, whatever it is, you might be able to download a TIFF in 16-bit from your camera. It doesn't matter. You just know that it's in 16-bit, but RAW always carries all the information and is in 16-bit. So you don't have to edit in RAW. You can just open. It recognizes it that it's a raw image, and then it'll come up and you'll have in Photoshop, you have all the raw, and you can use that too. You can make all your adjustments in RAW, but if you're not familiar with that type of editing, just continue to open it, and you'll open it as a 16-bit file in regular Photoshop and in Lightroom. So we covered lapses. That's pretty much what they covered on some of that. Is there any questions on that?
No, but I was going to mention a lot of people now when they're shooting RAW, if they're working in Photoshop, usually they'll open in the camera RAW. And there's where it's important is when they then want to open it in Photoshop, that they have that setting set so that it's opening as a 16-bit.
Right.
Or if they export it out of Lightroom, to make sure they have the settings set that it's a 16-bit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and it'll show. Let me say, for instance, right here. If you look up in here, all these files are 8-bit. And if you look up in here, anything that you open will show you what bit, and you see the 8 right there, and it's got a parenthesis around it. That's 8-bit. If it's 16, it'll show it. So if you're not sure, it tells you that information right on the tab when you open up that file. So if you haven't got that, then it's going to be an 8-bit. I'm not sure if there's another.
They can't hear you with X-Rite. They can't hear you. Oh, once you've calibrated with X-Rite, like Color Monkey or Muki, don't you also have to take into account what light you have on? And if you change the lighting, it changes the color. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Once you've calibrated your monitor, it usually wants to look at the ambient light around first.
Yeah.
And then if you change the lighting, does that automatically change what you're looking at on screen?
Yeah, the like the Huey stick does that.
Yeah.
Because it's plugged in, and you can have the ambient light around, and it does that. Those are ultra fine tune things that you can do and adjust your monitor, before the those do that. They have that, and it's usually just a little stick, and it measures what's happening, and then you can set it, and it will continuously calibrate your or adjust to do that. And there again, that's it, with the things that I do in most things, that's something, those are really small little things. It's the important thing about any kind of editing is just watching your numbers and watching your histogram, and you'll, if you look at your numbers, you'll probably have pretty good results, and having ambient light different doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't make that huge of a difference, as long as you're studying your information and looking at your histograms and trying to and using because the print will look, it just, that's just a little bit heavy on worrying about things too much on that side. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of things in cases where that might be effective and you want to have all those adjustments. That's just things that I think more importantly is just having your information where you set and adjusted where you want it to be as far as your files.
Yeah, Scott, I've found unless you have extremely bright light, it really doesn't affect it that much other than your eyes may adjust a bit.
Your eyes will just adjust. Your eyes are
Yeah.
the most fabulous things. They're like instant adjusters.
And actually, I had some people saying, you should be in a totally dark room. And I found that to actually not work that well. Moderately light, just, you want to have some light because your eyes then aren't.
Right.
So,
And then and that's where a lot of times when you're editing, that's the ambient light makes a difference in too. And when we talk about darker images, because okay, so now you're seeing all you're seeing is your monitor and the image blasting through from backlight, and so you're going to see things that when you have ambient light that probably wouldn't show up, because then now you got light coming back. So and changing how that might view. So it's I don't rely, and there again, it's just me. I don't rely a whole lot on what my monitor. It's really what's important is the results you get if you're trying to do a print. But if you're gonna just use things on your monitor or do things like that, if it looks good on your monitor, then it's good. So, but if you're trying to dial in some printing, that's some of the things that will help you do that. Is just you're looking at all the values and your RGB values.
Another question?
Yeah, we've been talking about color and brightness. We've been talking about color and brightness. I was wondering if the printer you use has any effect on the actual resolution
Yeah,
of the
I'm gonna
picture.
have to.
Speak closer. Yeah. Am I supposed to talk? Yeah, it's supposed to be on. Try it now.
Yeah, we've been talking about color and brightness. How about resolution? The type of printer you use have any effect on that?
That was resolution.
Resolution of the print.
Yeah, so resolution is, how important is that? Yeah. It's everything. And
She believed the Democrats should deliver healthcare reform. Yeah, well, I was in the Oval Office with President Obama the night of the Massachusetts election when Scott Brown won him.
No, it was somebody talking about nothing and I muted them. It was some background noise out in the audience. Ignore that. I got it canceled. Resolution.
Okay, resolution. Okay, so your native resolution of your camera. Okay, so it's important that you want to preserve as much information that you have. So you shoot in RAW. If you have the capabilities of shooting in RAW, just leave it at its highest resolution that you have. So it comes in and it'll give you all the power that your camera is capable of. And then any sizing that you do, you can, you just leave it there. You just, if you're doing an 8x10 print and because you don't change, you can change. Here's an example, resolution. Let's just do a resolution thing here. Okay, so.
You would keep the maximum pixel dimensions, correct?
Sorry?
You keep the maximum pixel dimensions.
Yeah. Then never.
What the type, if you have a cheap printer, if you have a printer that's inexpensive, would that compromise the resolution in any way?
No, the resolution is what it is. The
printer has no effect on it.
the printer doesn't change your resolution.
It'll
The
print.
resolution of a printer, there's two different things. Talking, is that are we going in the right direction?
Well, it'll produce the resolution that's on the monitor or what the camera is capable of.
Yeah, there's no correlation between your monitor resolution to
Monitor, I understand that.
your file resolution. Those are two completely different things. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
So So your camera is only capable of producing so many pixels per inch. If it's a 20 megapixel or 30 megapixel camera or whatever, it's going to give you all the power of what it is. And when you go to image, we're up in here, this file is telling me it's 300 pixels per inch by 11 by 16. So if I wanted to make this smaller, 5 by 7, it becomes 700. So, you know, so there's 700 DPI. The important thing for printing, resolution for printing, if you're going to do a 1620, let's say, it's, if you can examine your resolution, which is under image size, whatever when you open up your image, it's probably going to come, it might be in 72 DPI, sometimes it shows it as 72 DPI. Let's just say, for instance, let's just say this is a camera image at 70. A lot of times when they come through, their default is 72 DPI. And you can, that's all the information. And so if you wanted this image, which is now 48 by 68, and you wanted that to be an 8 by 10, you just put in the 8 by 10 and you can see that the resolution should move. It went to 438. So you want to keep that resolution. And in printing, the example is that at your printing size, you want to see something have maybe more than 200 pixels per inch of resolution. So if you start falling below that, you might want to see pixelization or bit mapping or things like that. So what you see at 72 DPI, what happens when the resolution becomes too small, any straight lines will start looking jagged. And you start seeing the actual pixels will start looking blocky. So having resolution at 72 DPI, you want to smoothen those lines. If you have to do something and all you've got is 72 DPI, you might want to resample it to say 200 DPI and just do a resample. And then what it will do is resample pixels to give you a smoother line and not be blocky. That's probably the only time that you would want to mess with resolution, when you're going really big and you want to avoid any kind of bit mapping or pixelization where you see the actual blockiness of an image. And they have resizing software things that you can use. You know, Gigapixel does that. And what they do is they pick nearest neighbor pixels and say, here's a red pixel. Well, we're going to do 2 red pixels by that 1 red pixel so that it doesn't become blocky, and so that you can expand the size and have a larger image. But it's important when you bring an image in to access all the information that the camera is giving you. Is that?
I have a follow-up question. So, but the other thing is, like if you're exporting in Lightroom or if you're looking at your image on Photoshop, just like you're doing there, I've normally been told you got to keep it around 300 DPI to get the best print.
Right. You do a print at 300 DPI and you do a print at 150 DPI, it's really hard to tell the difference. You're going to really see the difference if it's at 72 or 96 or things like that. So those are small. Yes. Yeah. If you can do everything at 300 DPI without, I like the idea of never having to resample, because you're bringing things in that were never part of the original image. So I mean, sometimes, yeah, you want to do something when you're standing back from across. It's all about viewing distance. So if you're standing, you know, you're going to put something up on a wall far away from where you're viewing, then you can do, you know, you can get away with things like that. But if you're going to look at things like this, you want to have as much, you know, you 300 DPI would be things like that. But it's hard to tell the difference between something at 200 DPI and 300 DPI.
Okay,
Hi,
another question?
converting color images to black and white. I've had trouble with red, kind of red cast.
The grayscale.
Red cast, if you convert from a color to black and white,
Oh,
trouble with the red cast.
okay, yeah, yeah. How
How to get rid of that?
the convert to black and white is what.
Yes, and eliminate a red cast that,
Oh, when you
Yep.
convert, you're getting a red cast.
yes.
Okay, that is, you're seeing it on your monitor? And you're seeing it in the print.
There'll be reddish cast in my prints.
Okay, so let's just say,
It looked fine on my monitor, but it'll show up in my prints. I have that trouble with the color sometimes too. White
Um,
areas will show up reddish.
if you're seeing any color cast with at any point in printing and or neutral or black and white grays, things like that. So the way I interpret a black and whites is if you want something to, you can do things like CPOs and things where they have it's a warm cast or it's an intentional cast. But if you're doing something and you want it to be just straight up black and white and you're having issues with that, that's going to be a printing issue. It's a calibration issue. The values in black and whites is always going to be at any, let me see, let's do this a different way. The values if you doing black and whites, are you doing black and whites and just as K only, as a black only channel?
Oh, no, I'm just using Photoshop to convert. If I got something you click on to convert the whole thing to black and white. You can specify whether you want a warm black or a cold black.
Right.
It'll look great on the monitor. The print comes
So-
out reddish.
That would be an issue, and it could be an issue with the printer. It's going to be one thing. But I just want to get back here. I want to show you something here. Let me see
No,
if
I
I
never
can
shoot in
find
black
this.
and white.
So I just convert this back to. So I created a grayscale and then I converted it back to RGB. So RGB grayscales, all the values are going to be equal. In the info channel, if you're doing black and whites, all the values you see there's, if you look over in RGB values, it's a 103, 103, 103. Every value is going to be equal amounts of red, green, and blue. And so that's a black and white image is what I call a traditional black and white image. And if you wanted to do some color cast to it, you can do some filters and things like that. If I don't know, am I going in a territory that you're
Yeah.
interested? If something's off kilter, you'll see something, and you talk about a magenta cast. That's just the balance is off, and you can just see that. There's by subtracting the green channel either way, and the histogram, the balance becomes off.
So you're in properties and levels? Is that where you're getting this window? That you-
Where, if someone is in Photoshop, how did you get there? So that if,
what I did- yeah, let's just go back to the steps. This was a color image, and let's go. Sorry about that. Let's go back to history. So, if you want to do it, there's a couple of different ways to create an image in black and white. There's the mode. I think it was mode. In this case, I'm just doing, I go to grayscale. I'm just gonna flatten it. It's because there's layers on it. So right now, that's just a one channel black. If you see it right there, it's just a K, it's just black only. So it's just one channel. And then I go back to mode RGB. And then it's got all three channels in it back into it in RGB. There's another way, and I'm trying to think of on this Photoshop where that's at. Let's see. Yeah, I'm losing this where this would be. There's another adjustment. I'm trying to think where you can actually adjust the black and the white levels with the there's some sliders. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ragnar? Do you know where that part is at? I'm just trying to think of where on this one, which is a really cool image, a way of doing this. I just not, because it's a fun way in doing this. Where would it, you know what I'm talking about with an image?
Adjustments. Levels, curves, and black and white.
It might be. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's right there in front of me. Okay, so here's an idea. You can go to, and then you can take any of these reds. So that lady had a lot of red hair in there, and you can take the reds and make these fine adjustments in creating, and it will do it and make adjustments, and you can do things that will have more contrast in certain areas of your color conversion to black and white. So this is a fun thing to play with to create some really cool landscape black and whites. And you can adjust your greens in ways and things like that.
Yeah, can I say something? The thing to remember is same color lightens, opposite color darkens.
Right.
When we used to do black and white film, we would use these filters. So with that, ideally, if you have the yellows and you want them a little lighter in the black and white, you increase or decrease. So just remember that same color if you're looking at the color wheel. But same color lightens, opposite color darkens.
All right. Is it? All good?
Any other questions? Any other comments? But anything online? Anybody? No, I got. All right.
All right. Well,
We-
thank you.
Yeah,
Good,
thank
Carol.
you, Scott.
Thank you.
Right. Right, plug. Right, right.
Shameless promotion. Come on.
Oh, boy. A shout out for VADA Color.
Yeah.
Okay, so VADA Color is on Woodmere,
Right.
and Scott is just immensely patient when you come in and you really don't know what you're doing, and first time you hand him some files and he's like, this might be a better way to hand me files, and that's really helpful. And all kinds of materials, all kinds of papers. You
Thank
make
you.
great recommendations, really support people who, I would say,
One of the, going back to this chart here, if anybody's interested in you're having troubles with your monitor, I have small prints of this file that we use, and I hand them out. I send them home, and then I can email you this file. It comes up on your computer, you view it, you view this little print that I give you, and you can compare your monitor to this analog print that I have, as well as the grayscale. I have the grayscale attached to it. And that's just something that's very helpful that we use as a tool to get the photographers that I work with so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, you use the paper that they want to have it printed on. Ideally,
I'm sorry?
they would have, you would print it on the paper that they're going to use.
I use a photo paper and then I print this piece out and it's just, it's something visual. You can go home and say, yeah, this looks, this isn't close and I need to adjust my monitor, or you use it as a tool to manually adjust your monitor.
And Scott, you've got all kinds of things in your shop hanging on the wall, all kinds of paper.
Yeah.
Can people, you're good with people like, I'm not really sure what I want to do with this image. Come in and take a look at the options. People
we
are
have all
welcome to
kinds
do
of
that.
things and,
Mhm.
and options and things that you can look at. And one of the things that we like to do is to do exactly what is you doing small test prints with one of your favorite images so that you get, so that when you come and bring something to us that if we're going to print something for you, that you get expected results. And so that's one of
Yep.
the things, so that everybody's on the same page
Mhm.
and having your monitor set up properly and doing proper adjustments with your editing and things like that that help out. So thank you.
Yes, VADA. Yep, VADA.
VADA Color. VADA Color is the name of the business. VADA is my grandmother's name, and that's just
Yep.
why I called it.
Yep.
So,
Google and you'll get right there.
all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Scott. Thanks everybody at home for joining.
How late do you stay open?
What are your hours? Oh, 9 to 4. 9 to 4, Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays we go home early at like 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1. So,
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott.
all right. Thank you.